26 new features, one LTS release. Let's get on to it. I'll be comparing some of the features with the previous long-term support release 24.04, and I will highlight them as we go. So let's start with the boot. You know, the first change you will see is before you even log in. The loading spinner here is different. The old one used to be the Ubuntu logo itself. That was more branded, more recognizable. The new one is simpler, more modern. Whether this is an upgrade or a downgrade, it depends on who you ask. So drop your opinion in the comments whether you like the new boot animation or not. Since we are still at boot, let's take a look at another boot related change, which is more of under the hood. So Ubuntu 26.04 switches from the traditional Initra MFS tools to a more modern tool called TrackQt for generating the Initra MFS. If you're wondering what that even means, the Initra MFS is essentially a tiny file system baked into the kernel image that helps your system mount the root drive on startup. So if you didn't know about it till today, you won't be bothered with in future as well. So consider it one of those improvements that you don't see but probably feel. The next one is more for dual booters with modern systems. So now Ubuntu 26.04 supports TPM-backed full disk encryption. This is a good thing because previously, if you had full disk encryption with Windows, this means you had to, log in, enter your password, encryption password all the time. This thing should improve with this new feature. Okay, this one is big deal. Ubuntu 26.04 is not just Wayland by default, it is Wayland only. So the option to switch back to X11 from the login screen is completely gone. For most users, this shouldn't matter at all because Wayland has been there for a while and it has improved and provides better experience. But if you rely on some specific tools or workflows that still need X11, you should consider that when you try to upgrade or install 26.04. And now the feature that always sparks debate, new wallpapers. Okay, I know that not everyone considered them to be a feature worth considering in a list like this, but with Ubuntu, each release wallpaper all designed around the code name and the theme of that version. So it's a small thing, but it does give each release its own identity. That is why I always include them in the list of Ubuntu features. The new release of Ubuntu 26.04 also brings a set of new default applications. This has been the trend with Gnome for the last few releases as they keep on replacing classic applications with a more modern one that follows the lib advita and other new design guidelines from Gnome. So in Ubuntu 26.04, we have Showtime replacing Totem as the new default video player. It has a more minimalist interface and overall it blends very well with the system. Next, Paper replaces the Evans document viewer. This change was already there in the version 25.10, and the newer release of Papers actually gives the ability to annotate a document, so you don't need a third party application for this simple task. Ubuntu 24.04 LTS users will also notice a new default image viewer and a new terminal called Ptyxis, or I don't know how to pronounce it actually. This new terminal has additional features for containers. Both terminal and the image viewer were already there in 25.10. So it is not new for these people who are already using 25.10, but people who are still using the old LTS version, this will be a new thing. Next, Next new default application is resources that replaces the classic GNOME system monitor. And as you can see, it is cleaner and more modern looking than the old one. The next feature or the lack of it is the removal of software and updates tool, and it is going to frustrate some people for sure. This was the graphical way to manage third-party repositories and PPAs. The Ubuntu team's reasoning is that it's too confusing or not too secure for the beginners. And honestly, I kind of understand their point because it does have a lot of low level surface option which the people should not be touching. But that said, none of the functionality is gone. You can still manage PPAs, external repositories via command line, or you can even install this tool again from the repository. Right? Still available, just not installed anymore. Okay, the next thing you might notice something small, when you type your password into the terminal, you will notice that it shows asterisks. That's because something has changed underneath. Ubuntu 26.04 replaces the classic sudo with sudo rs or Rust-based rewrite. So you're still typing sudo, but underneath it runs the Rust-based sudo. This was already featured in the previous Ubuntu release, the 25.10, and it is now more prominent in the 26.04. All right. Another Rust-based change that was already introduced in 25.10 is the classic Linux commands like ls, cp, mv, and others. So the typical GNU core utils, those commands have a Rust Rust based counterpart. So basically you have same command, same flag, same muscle memory, just everything the same, but underneath you are running a Rust based version instead of the classic GNU command. Here is a performance change for users with newer hardware. Ubuntu 26.04 now offers the V3 variant for all packages. What does it mean? Well, modern CPUs support additional instruction set that older chips don't. So the V3 variant takes advantage of these, which means you might get better performance on machines, from the roughly the last 4 3 4 years or something. Some of these packages already had in 25.10, but 26.04 extended to the full archive. So if you have a new machine and you want to squeeze out the better performance, you should enable the V3 version. Two small but handy additions to the Gnome overview search. First, it now surfaces Snap app results. So if you search for something that isn't installed, it will show you what's available to install without having you to open the app center. Second, there is now a web search shortcut. So clicking the Firefox icon will open your browser with the search already filled in. Do note that this thing only works if Google is your default search engine, which might not always be the case. So, this feature won't work for you. So, both options can be turned off in settings search if you would rather keep things clean. The App Center gets a couple of welcome updates too. Now, touchscreen users finally get the scroll support, which should have been there from the start, I think. But well, it's good to have the change. Anyways, the change which I like the most is, you know, that App Center now actually shows you the installed Debian packages that, the packages that you installed externally. So you can see them under the manage section and even, uninstall them from there. It's a small thing, but if you know that Ubuntu's obsession with Snap, giving some space to Debian packages is still a welcome change. Speaking of Debian packages, apt the apt package manager itself gets some love, some updates in Ubuntu 26.04. There is a pager view when the search results are too long, so you don't need to keep on scrolling through wall of text. You can use less or more command kind of pager and easily go through them without flooding your screen. There are also some newer changes in apt, like there's history options, rollback options, and a few newer command options that you should utilize, and probably that requires a video of its own. More about it in a later video. Ubuntu used to had a start application. This application is not there anymore, but you can still find it in the settings under app. So if you want to run an application at the boot time automatically at each login, you can go to the app settings and then enable the auto login option from there. The Orca screen reader gets a redesigned preference window now accessible directly from settings. So there is some accessibility improvement here, which should be helpful for people, visually impaired people or people who need accessibility feature. If you have a good gaming setup, you should be enjoying this new feature. So if your monitor supports FreeSync or similar adaptive sync technology, you can now enable variable refresh directly in the display settings. So this means you can enjoy a tear-free gaming without needing to fiddle with anything outside of Ubuntu and you know try to install third-party apps to get the perfect gaming feel for this. On a related note, the fractional scaling now also has more granular options. So if your display sits in an awkward spot between 100 and 200, you can scale the looks right for your screen, your resolution, and your eyesight. The file manager has lots of tiny changes. Like one of them is like when you start typing a path in Nautilus, when you're searching for something, the suggestions are now case insensitive. So if you just type lowercase DOW, it will start suggesting D caps D downloads. It sounds minor, but you've spent a lot of time, doing searching stuff, you will save up at least one key press here. In Ubuntu 20.04, the folder icons only changed color at the top portion when you set an accent color. In 26.04, the entire icon changes to match your accent color. It sounds trivial, but it looks noticeably more polished in my opinion. I let you decide whether it looks better now or it was, better looking previously. Leave it in the comments, please. Okay, SysProf is now included by default. It's a system-wide profiling tool. It tells you exactly which function in a program are eating up your CPU time and resources. This is not like your regular system monitor. It's more in-depth, more low-level stuff. So if you probably haven't heard of it till now, you shouldn't need it. But if you ever need it, it's right there in your system. There is a security center app that was introduced back in 24.10. The idea being a single place to manage Ubuntu Pro, your firewall, disk encryption, and app level permission. Um, I'll be honest with you, it still feels like, more of a work in progress. So I'll keep an eye on it and we should see improvements on it in the future, hopefully. Parental controls also get some upgrade, some actually meaningful upgrades because parents can now set daily time limits, how long the computer can be used, during what hours it can be used, and then system will automatically lock when those limits are hit. So you don't have to negotiate with kids. The computer just stops. It's good for parents, not for kids. This one is new territory for Ubuntu. You can now run local AI models natively without needing to set up a tool like Ulama or other third-party tools. For anyone interested in private offline AI, this lowers the barriers significantly. You just need Snap. They are using Snap inference features, so everything is there right there with like a Snap package, but optimized for your hardware. That is a good thing. Another good thing is that Ubuntu 26.04 brings native AMD Radeon Open Compute support out of the box and thus improving GPU compute workloads without manual setup. So if you're doing machine learning, data processing, or GPU accelerated computing on AMD hardware, this is going to be a big quality of life improvement. Or so I hope. I don't have such hardware. All right. A tiny change, but it's a good, end user facing change is that on supported laptops, you can now set a battery charging limit directly from the system setting. So your battery stops charging before it hits 100%. If you didn't know already, keeping your battery between 20% and 80% significantly extend its long-term health, or that's what, expert says. So but this feature will only be visible to the systems where the hardware actually supports such a feature. So if you don't see it, probably your hardware, your laptop doesn't support it. Okay, and finally, telemetry options are more granular. Actually, it's more frequent. So if you opt in, you can choose to send an anonymized system report monthly or only when you upgrade to a new version. This helps Ubuntu, get some statistics about how the system is being used. It's totally optional. You can disable it or you can enable and choose how frequently you want to send the data. It's anonymized. It's not going to recognize you or collect some data on you and then show you ads or anything of that, like that. Anyways, next is more of under the hood change, and that is the Linux kernel 7.0, which should bring support for newer hardware and a long list of under the hood improvements that is a topic of its own. So I'm not going into details of the kernel 7.0 features. So that is 26 features or 27. I don't know if that felt like a lot. Well, it should, because this is a long-term support release and it is supposed to pack a punch, pack a lot of features in it so that it feels like, you're getting something new, something, something big. That is the concept of long-term support release, I guess. It's your turn now. You tell me which features you are genuinely excited about. Leave that in the comments and I'll see you in the next video.